Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is contrast and how we can use contrast in our lives, in our experience, as a way to find our true north. So it should be a fun topic. And before we get started, let's just take a couple minutes to get centered, get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose. Hold it and imagine clear, crisp oxygen just flowing into your lungs, into your bloodstream, nourishing all the cells of your body, all your organs. And as you exhale, exhale any tension. Allow yourself to really feel relaxation and letting go in your shoulders and your neck and your back. And let's take another deep breath in through your nose. Hold it, and this time imagine sparkling white light coursing into all the molecules in your body, lighting you up from the inside out and expanding out and connecting you with the world beyond. And now exhale, and let's just take a moment to gently, gently press our palms together and softly rub your fingers against your palms. Feel that sensation. We can have a sensational moment together, just feeling the tingling in your fingers and in your palms and allowing that to bring you present to your body and present to this moment here right now. And welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm really glad to have you here with me this morning and to be here with you. Thank you so much for being here and engaging in these thought exercises together. Um, Contrast. So let's talk about what do I mean by contrast in the first place. So if you are a follower of the law of attraction in any way, like if you're up on all of that, then you're aware that it's by knowing what we don't want that we know what we do want a lot of times. And that's really what I'm talking about when it comes to contrast. And we have the ability to hone into our awareness of what feels good and what doesn't feel good. And I don't mean just in a superficial sensory or sensual way. I mean inside, deep inside, what feels like it's in alignment and what feels like it's in contrast or misalignment, or what feels really uncomfortable. Good morning. I don't know what SC means. Somebody said you have SC, but welcome. I'm really glad you're here. So, um, as far as contrast, we're talking about feeling into your experience. And when we notice a feeling that is uncomfortable, it's an opportunity for us to dig more deeply. Oh, Snapchat. No. Blessings to you. Welcome, welcome. It's good to see you here this morning. So, when we notice that we're feeling upset, it's an opportunity or a signal. We can start paying attention to these moments and use them as signals for how to respond to, or really signals to look inside more deeply and to listen more carefully to what kind of dialogue we're having going on inside, because so much of our experience is generated by our internal conversation. And good morning from Norway. Welcome, welcome, Liliane. Great to have you here with us. So we're talking about contrast and the law of attraction, essentially, and how contrast, meaning the things that introspection, yes, indeed, the things that we respond to with contraction or with upset can be tools for us to notice what we're thinking, what we're creating in our mind, what we're doing or feeling or thinking that is out of alignment with our core sense of being. And so when we find out what we don't like, that also can be a signal to explore what we do like. And um, it's not it's not as superficial as like and don't like either, because we do have an internal GPS. We do have an internal compass that helps to guide us and direct us when we pay attention to it. And that's where this whole idea of contrast comes in. So you can just experience it right now. If you hold a thought for just a couple seconds of the question, for instance, uh, what's wrong with me? And I don't want you to keep holding it for very long, but you can feel that it doesn't feel good. Just even that thought doesn't feel good. And now if you move from that to what is wonderful about me, what do I like about me? And sometimes people would even have a hard time with that question. So then you could, if that question feels not so great, you can look and say, what would it feel like if I liked things about me? What would it feel like if I knew things that were wonderful about me? And then you can start moving into a different feeling space, and then that can open up a new internal dialogue for yourself. So what I'm talking about today really is how we can use our sensing, our ability to feel into our levels of comfort or discomfort to guide us into a direction that is more in alignment with our heart and soul. So how could that show up in your life? Well, throughout the day, even there are tasks that we're tasked with doing, and some of them uh, are not things that we currently enjoy. And so, in the midst of that task, you can notice what's the conversation. So, if I'm telling myself, I hate doing this, this is such a waste of time, and on like that, obviously, the experience of doing something, and we're talking about something that you have a responsibility to do, for instance, and you're creating all this resistance around it through this internal conversation. What we have an opportunity to do is to say, well, what would make doing this more fun? What could I do right now to have this be more enjoyable? um, Lillian says, this is interesting. I agree. Well, see, it's actually pretty easy. It's pretty easy. Well, we'll say it's simple and not always easy. How's that? It's simple because what we get to do is to become aware of the feeling and the internal conversation. And then we get to choose to use that awareness to redirect ourselves. How we can redirect ourselves is through internal conversation, through maybe doing something else, through choosing deliberate awareness. We get to recalibrate. So, welcome, Christina. So good to hear you and see you here this morning. Welcome, welcome. She says, we'll be working on this. This last week, I've been feeling so third wheel like, paying attention to it, trying to figure out if it's my self dialogue, a lack of confidence that people don't really want me around, or if I really am not a good fit. So, Christina, I think it's important to feel in to your own knowing. It sounds to me like you're feeling uncomfortable, like you personally are feeling uncomfortable, and you get to look at those feelings and interact with them, not so much about whether other people really don't want you around or not, because you get to feel whether whether the situation is a situation that supports you. And then you get to decide whether you want to be in that environment. If an environment is uncomfortable, I mean, I don't know if you have the option to be exiting that environment or not. As far as feeling, Lillian says it's a bit like power of our thoughts, what we think we create. Exactly. It is totally. We're all talking about, or we're talking all about the power of our thoughts and what we are creating. And so, Christina, as far as feeling like, okay, so you have options. You're not necessarily stuck in that situation. The discomfort, oftentimes, it's unfortunate, but oftentimes the way that we end up growing and instituting change is through discomfort. When things are unfortunately, most often, when things are bad enough, then we finally move on and make different choices. And the thing that's really interesting about this, and I've seen it in my own life over and over and over again, is that we first get small signals. And when we ignore those signals, which I have done many times in my life, when we ignore those signals, the signals get louder. And when we ignore those signals, if we choose to ignore those signals, the signals get louder. And eventually, the signals become so loud that we can't ignore them. And so, what I'm talking about here is sensing in more deeply to those feelings, actual sensations and awarenesses of our internal response and resistance and attraction to different things. When we sense in and are more responsive, we end up not having to suffer so much. And this is really interesting because I've noticed, I mean, I used to be queen of suffering, and I mastered it. I mastered it. I was really good at suffering. And I've just been recently noticing that for the most part, I don't suffer. And when I do have moments that are challenging and difficult, they pass more quickly. And the reason that they pass more quickly, and the reason I think that I have less and less of these moments, is that I'm listening to that inner guidance more quickly, so that the discomfort doesn't have to get elevated to the point where it's 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 intolerable. So I'm allowing myself to adjust to the internal guidance system as the signals arise, without requiring them to get really, really, really pronounced and loud. And I want to have you maybe think about this as if we were navigating a ship, for instance, or an airplane, or even, well, probably less so a car, because we have our GPS that's giving us all the directions really clearly. What happens with a ship and a plane, especially, not that I know how to navigate them, but what I understand is that they go off course and then they're redirecting, and they go off course and they're readjusting, and they go off course and they're continually readjusting. And that's what I'm advocating here, is that we get to respond to these internal messages and keep recalibrating. So Lilianne says it's not always like they don't want us around, and it's not always like it's something wrong with us, but it's not the right persons to have in our lives at that time. I used to think like that too before, but not anymore. I choose who I want in my life now, and it feels better. And so back to you, Christina, it may be, and thank you for that, Lilianne, because I totally relate. And on that line for you, Christina, sometimes as we grow, we outgrow a lot of people and circumstances in our lives. And I'm sure you've heard the saying, friends for a season, a reason, a lifetime, or people come into your life for a season, a reason, or a lifetime. And what I've noticed is through different periods of my growth, my affiliations, my friendships, my circle has shifted. And there are some people that have lasted through those transitions, and there are other people who haven't, and even people that I've loved very deeply and that maybe that I still have love for, even though we don't align. And if people stay in your life, it may be that the nature of the relationship shifts and comes to a place that is more in alignment with your new direction. And so Lilianne says, and not everyone fits in each other's lives anymore. That's true. It's true. As we evolve, and she said also, we grow apart as we evolve. So interestingly, yes, we can grow apart, and yes, we can grow closer. And the thing is that it's not even necessarily a linear cycle. I have some friends that have been my friends for more than 30 years, which is scary to say that, to have those numbers. But the nature of our friendship has moved in and out of different expressions. So from at sometimes through this period we've been closer and sometimes further apart and then come back closer, and it's interesting to see how we evolve in our lives and with others. And Lilianne says, yes, we grow apart and with some and closer to others, and new people show up. So I find it really interesting to see it's all part of our evolution. And if we can allow that, and this is again talking about the law of attraction, if we can allow, in other words, if we can release any resistance, if we can just be with life as it arises, as it flows without the resistance, we have a much smoother ride. And Christina, I think that that's part of what's going on for you is that, and I'm guessing because I don't know the intricacies or intimacy of your situation, but oftentimes I personally see in the past, particularly, not so much anymore, thankfully, but in the past, I would see the trajectory of where things were going and resisted it. Like I didn't want it to go that way. So I would resist it, or I would deny it, or I would try to make it different. And the thing is that it was going in the direction it was going. And the more resistance I had to it, the more suffering I created for myself and other people often in the process. And so the path to our new future, the path to shaping a world that works for all of us, is being more connected with that inner voice and that inner guidance that really truly is a powerful, powerful GPS. And I'm not talking about the voice that eggs us on to behaviors that are destructive to ourselves or destructive to others. I'm not talking about the superficial voice that says, I know I shouldn't do it, but I'm going to do it anyway. Not that voice, because there's a deeper voice that when you feel into your heart, that's where you can find your GPS. Are these people the people I want to be spending time with for real? And I'm not, I think that we can, it just occurred to me to be thinking about past relationships. And in my past, um, I was very codependent, and I was very needy a good portion of my life, and would have an attachment to people that were not healthy for me, but I was I was kind of um, in a spell of my own making, really, about about my attachment and connection to this other person. And what that did was it pulled me out of, or I allowed myself to be pulled by that out of my center, out of the place of my heart. And Christina says, I honestly felt included until this week, still trying to figure out what changed, or did it? I'm heading out to nature today to look inward. I love that, Christina. Grounding in nature is such a powerful, powerful, revitalizing and grounding, centering practice. Uh, when we connect with nature, it gives us inroads to connecting with our deeper selves. And it may be that just there's some stuff coming up for you, Christina, this week that is shifting your experience internally. And in feeling that contrast, who knows what's going to open up if you. So here's the art about this contrast thing and the challenging feeling stuff. We want to be able to allow the energy of that emotion to move and to transform, and we also don't want to be perpetuating it. So beyond allowing it to move. So we notice the contrast, and then we get to pivot. And it's not always easy. It's not always easy to pivot, but when we feel this this intense feeling, if we are present to the energy of it without judgment, without conversation, that's the tricky part, because we get to just feel into it. Then that feeling itself has the um, impetus or the impulse or the ability to dissipate, because it's energy, it's congested energy. Like if you imagine anxiety, what is anxiety? There's like, you can feel that vibration, that congestion, that constriction, right? And as we really feel into it and be present to it, my experience, and in the work I do, I see this over and over again, is that it'll expand and it'll move, and then it might feel like something else. It, might go from anxiety to sadness, or it might go into fear, or it might go into anger, and then you get to feel that. The thing is that the energy and these sensations don't have to have a story attendant to them, and we often generate these feelings by perpetuating or creating a story. We'll say, okay, here's how I feel. Why do I feel that way? I feel that way because these people aren't accepting me. And I'm not in any way minimizing what your situation is, Christina. I'm just using that as an example, not saying that it applies to you directly necessarily. But, I'm feeling this way. Why am I feeling this way? And it could be that as you tap into that feeling, you gain clarity around what the dynamic is that's going on, and recognizing that the feeling is a signal system. Hey, pay attention here. there's something going on that isn't in alignment with either your core self or your beliefs or your intentions, etc. So Lillian says that yes, nature helps with so much. I agree. And the biggest thing in in connecting with nature and being allowing ourselves to be present to nature is that it does help to bring us back to ourselves. You know, digging your feet into the ground or your fingers into the ground or sitting on the ground, there's it's a real thing. It's a real thing. It really does truly make a difference and connects us with our true nature when we allow ourselves to be present. And so, this idea of contrast is first, listen, listen and cultivate your awareness. That's first. Second, Lillian says nature is so healing. It is. It is. So, first, listen. Second, feel. So the feeling and listening is kind of one and the same thing. So we'll say that that's number one is listen, feel. and and look at the contrast. Like look at what would it take to feel better in this moment? What would it feel to shift? What would it feel like and what would it take to shift this feeling of this moment? What is the message in this moment? And feel into the message rather than think into the message, because our minds will get wrapped up in such noise. And so here's the thing, when we ask questions, our mind is going to answer them. So if we ask bad questions, our mind answers bad questions. And we started out with that at the very beginning. If we ask good questions, our mind answers good questions. And so we want to strike a balance between allowing the energy of these emotions to move and then allowing our thoughts to shift and giving the thoughts the impetus to shift through asking conscious questions. And so with one of my clients, we're actually crafting a list of questions for her to be able to attend to when she gets in a less than resourceful state, to be able to tap in and then check out these questions and be present to those questions. And so Christina says, I'm actually trained on mindfulness in nature. It's such a comfort and support for me. Christina, so maybe this contrast that you're experiencing is exactly the push that you needed to be able to go back to nature and the mindfulness practice in nature. Maybe it was that you needed that and the contrast showed up just to give you the incentive to go there. And who knows what what magic can evolve from that moment, that you know, the fact that you have taken the choice, the positive choice to go and commune with nature. Who knows what magic can come of that? And I invite you to go into that mindfulness opportunity with communing with nature with an expectation and an intention. Rather, I prefer intention to expectation, with an intention to open up new possibilities for yourself. So Lillian says, yes, that was her thought too. And Danette, welcome, Danette. I have such a hard time being mindful. I fall into people's negative baiting all the time. Power struggles and always wanting to be right is something I'm really focusing on changing, focused to change. So good for you. Good for you to be focusing on changing the power negative baiting, to be changing your response to that and to being right all the time. um, one of the things that I, having been there, seriously, having been there, because there were lots of power struggles and baiting and whatever in my environment for a good portion of my life. One of the things that I've noticed in it is that as I have gained more wholeness and more sense of my presence, I don't have to argue as much. In fact, I have a lot more space to be able to be solid in what I know and what I feel. And it's okay if other people don't agree. It's okay. Let them think and feel what they think. And one of the things that we all get to entertain is that other people's opinions of us are none of our business, because their opinion is just their opinion. Now, if there are a bunch of people that are having the uh, same opinion that's based on some kind of observation, then we get to look inside and say, is there something there? But for the most part, if somebody thinks you're this, that, or the other, it is their opinion. And you can entertain it as, well, that's their opinion. Is that important for me? Is there something there for me to benefit from? But you know, because when someone has an opinion, it's their lens that they're seeing life through, and their lens may not be in any kind of alignment with your lens. And therefore, if they have that opinion, on them, that's theirs. It's not your responsibility to try and alter someone's opinion of you, and to attach your self-worth with their opinion. And it is powerful. Danette says, thank you. It's a good way to look at it. That's powerful. It's important. It's important. And what I notice is that as we gain our own integrity, and what I mean by integrity is integration, as we gain our own wholeness, then we can allow people their opinions without feeling threatened by them. It's like, okay, I get that that's your experience. you know I don't have the same experience, and we can agree to disagree. So Danette says, I needed to hear that right now. I'm glad. Oh, she says, I needed to hear that. Wow. Good. Well, hopefully that helps. And what we, as we become more centered, as we become more connected with that voice that is our GPS, then we have a greater capacity to be able to allow people to be how they are. And the more we allow people to be how they are, the more we allow ourselves to be how we are, the more we allow others to be how they are, the more they allow us to be how we are. It's like this whole big cycle. So when we release the resistance, so like here we are, we're resisting, we're baiting each other, we're having contrast. And if I stop resisting, what happens to that other person? They don't have a place to go with that. So their behavior has to change. The fascinating thing is that as we evolve, the people around us happen to change. Why? Because our behaviors change, and they need to change their behaviors too, because we're not responding in the same way that we had. And Lillian says, just be yourself. That's important. You are important. It's true. It's true. And the being our authentic self is not being somebody who is at the effect of other people's um, negative behaviors. And I don't mean just shutting it out defensively, because that's also resistance. What I mean is allowing the flow. And it's like, here's this energy coming towards you, you can just sort of step out of the way of it instead of having to fight it back. And I had most of my life fighting back. And I can tell you it's exhausting and not particularly productive. And the more we're able to just allow ourselves to flow with the experiences, the less we suffer and the less suffering we cause. That's my experience. So Christina says, interesting convo. I'm actually wondering if one of the persons I'm feeling disconnected with feeling disconnected with may actually be going through their own power struggle and need of a feeling of recognition. Interesting to ponder. And Christina, that's a brilliant insight. Absolutely brilliant, because people act out of their own lens. So it's very likely that somebody else is going through their thing and it's not about you. And so that's something else that as we become more present to ourselves and our heart and our wholeness, we can allow that people are going through their own stuff. So that's a brilliant, brilliant insight. So, anyway, it's my time to say thank you so much for this really, really engaging time together. I am so grateful to you for your participation and for sharing so vulnerably and so authentically. And I have so much love and compassion for you and gratitude for being able to share this time together. My name's Mira Rubin, and this is the Core Connection. And I go live on Facebook on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page every day during the week at 9 a.m. Eastern. And I invite you to check out the other awesome programming on the Enlightened World Network page. And hopefully, you will join me again soon. This has been such a treat. Thank you.